Hi, I'm Natalie, and you may know me from such podcasts as this one, Infinitely Irrational. If you're a regular listener, you know that Kay and I are working on different projects at the moment, but fear not, we have definitely taken time out to enjoy some virtual coffee together. In the meantime, though, you also know that I've been bringing some friends in to help us get through these interesting times. So to close out this group of our special COVID-19 episodes, I would like to introduce a friend of mine. She always has such great perspective. She and I both share a love for delicious food. She lives in BC. I live in Houston. We both have great food scenes. She is an academic dean at a private high school in BC, and she also teaches sociology. Welcome, Anna Garland.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about what your work-life situation looks like.
Yeah, so I have a nice little work from home spot at my dining room table with my dog next to me, snoozing majority of the time.
Your coworker, your CEO.
Literally the best coworker I've ever had. And yeah, I feel like everyone feels the same way, but that there's really no separation between work and home now. So just trying to make sure to take care of myself and make sure that there is that actual separation.
Yeah. What have you been able to do to take care of yourself? You probably go on lots of walks with your puppers.
Yeah, I'm really lucky to live really close to Rock Creek Park, which is probably the best thing about DC, honestly, kind of like a hidden gem. But if you're a resident, then you know that it's there. But
yeah, instantly Googles Rock Creek Park.
Right. Definitely taking Buffy on lots of walks there. The neighborhood that I'm in is like really close to Rock Creek Park, but just like walking around, enjoying the weather. It's actually pretty nice here, which is good. My window's open. Yoga, reading, all those kinds of things.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you're a leader right now in times of change. What has communication with your team look like? How do you know that you're getting the message to your folks or even being helpful?
Yeah, it's definitely challenging. I would say the number one thing has just been to try and alleviate people's concerns as much as possible. So trying to help everyone understand that we're all trying to figure it out right now. Nobody has the answer. We're all going to just work together to try and get to a solution. And if that solution isn't working, we're going to tweak it, and that's okay. So just kind of roll with it, figure it out as we go, which is obviously really difficult for everyone involved, including administration and faculty, because that's really not what we're used to.
Right.
We want to have everything figured out. We want to have like control of our classroom and all those kinds of things. And we don't have that now. So I think just like being open, flexible, making yourself available, following up with people, making sure that people know that they can come to you with anything that's not working and you're going to be there to listen to them and figure out a solution together.
I think what you're saying, it's interesting because you and I were talking before this, and I had said that what faculty are focused on right now is getting their classes up to speed and talking to their students and making sure that everything is kind of running as smoothly as possible. And it sounds like the role that we have with our students is really similar to the role that you have with your team, in that other folks above you are making some decisions, which may or may not be popular. And then you have to in turn relay them to your team and manage kind of that communication and go back. And so it seems like your role are both kind of in the middle there.
Yeah, I would agree. I actually was thinking I'm always in a middleman position, but even more so now. So whether that's between parents and faculty or students and faculty or faculty and administration.
Or faculty and faculty.
Exactly. I work pretty closely with like our counseling staff. So just kind of the middleman between the faculty and the counseling center, and really just making sure that all of our students are okay and then all of our faculty are okay. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Have you been able to reach all of your faculty?
Yes. We've been okay in that regard. We had probably a couple days before we decided that we were going to go fully online to just regroup and send out some expectations and, talk things through. So that was really helpful. It was kind of overnight, but we, had a couple days, and then the weekend came, and then we started on Monday. So.
Okay. And so you're on spring break right now. I bet that's pretty busy still. The busiest spring break ever in not the best way.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm still working, but not crazy. No one's really bothering me. So that's good. I can just kind of get some things done that I wanted to do during the school year that now have been pushed to the side. And yeah, our online days are pretty busy. So it's definitely a weird mix of being more productive, but then also having, I was thinking about how my job is like a little bit different now. My job is essentially the same, but the percentage of time that I spend on certain roles within that position have changed a bit, and everything's, a lot quicker, and the frequency at which I'm dealing with those kinds of things. So like the amount of support that I give to students is definitely exists in my traditional role, but now it's more frequent and longer. So touching base with students that I know are struggling and kind of facilitating the conversation between them and their teachers, or being on Zoom calls with them when they're working with their tutor, things like that. Maybe the biggest group of students that are impacted are students with learning differences.
Yeah.
So whether that's as simple as an auditory learner now having to read things more often and comprehension in that regard, or our students with dyslexia, ADHD, challenges with executive function. So just being more present with them than I would need to do in a traditional campus setting where they have that face-to-face all the time. And now, they have so many distractions. And
yeah, you're right that it's tough.
Yeah. And they need the one-on-one time, and it's just not happening, or it's not happening in the same way. So it's not possible. So
yeah. And I say I'm over here. I'm so lucky I teach math, but I do feel that way, because if you are in a discipline like yours is sociology or history or something like that, I don't know how. Math is a universal language, by the way. I feel super lucky to teach it. By the way, I have a meme that I want to read to you. It says, History Essays in 2053 explain the use and roles of memes as a coping mechanism during the coronavirus pandemic of 2020. And I just really want to take a minute to talk about this on the podcast, because if anyone has any kids, please encourage them to be history majors so that they can assign the sociology major, so that they can assign that very assignment. 2053.
Really, though, I have the kids do a project that I call Sociology in Real Life. Seems so obvious, right? Like sociology is everywhere, but it's not until you're learning it that you realize truly that it is everywhere. So they have to pick things that happen to them, or things they overhear, or something they watch on TV or a news article or whatever, and then tie it to sociology. And like, we're literally living in sociology right now. Every day I'm like, oh, I have to find that article and put it on Canvas really quick, even though they're on spring break right now, but I just want them to read it.
No, I feel that, I can't remember who I was talking to, but I was telling them, I said, we would be remiss if we didn't use all the exponential graphs that we're talking about right now. I gave my business cal it's time for their test now, God bless them. And I gave them this problem where it was like, epidemiologists found this cure for this virus. And like, basically, here's the model of it. And so draw a graph that could represent this, and it takes into account first and second derivatives and stuff. Draw this graph. And so we would be remiss to not take advantage in any discipline, I think, of what we're happening right now. When do you see sociology or math in real life? Never, clearly. So while we're on the subject of just things we're doing in class, what are you doing?
We're meeting on Zoom, and I'm explaining directions and things like that. Or they read an article the other day that it was about poverty. And so it was a chapter in a book, and I'm blanking now on the title of the book, but it was a story about how there was this private school and they had a summer camp, and they gave a scholarship to an underrepresented population student in that category. And then when she wasn't doing as well in her math class, they didn't provide the resources to help her, but failing to address maybe the gap in foundation that she needed to be successful. Part of the story also was that there was a camp counselor there that had a similar background, and she was trying to help as much as she could, but she also didn't want to jeopardize the opportunity that she'd been given by working there.
Mm-hmm.
And so there wasn't much she could do. So the students, they read that chapter in the book, and then they got on the discussion board on Canvas and kind of talked about inequality and poverty. And
I think what you just said, just thinking about that in general, right now, what's happening, you had said you looked for current articles right now. And I think this whole situation is highlighting some of those, in maybe a slightly different way, but some of the inequities that exist right now.
Absolutely. I actually read an article in the New York Times it was basically students are at college and they're all the same, right? Once you're there, you're all in the dorm together. You're all going to the same classes. You all have, the meal plan, whatever. Somewhat, there's going to be those disparities, but they're not as obvious. And then now that we're in these online settings, and there are some students that have or don't have connection to internet, or their connectivity is spotty,
or no computer. All they have is like their phone.
Yeah, exactly. But then there's the other student that, they're Zooming from their beach house in Maine, but that's serious.
Life goals.
No, seriously. But yeah, the New York Times article was basically like showing the disparities now that are so obvious during this time. And the other student in that article was trying to help her mom keep running her food truck. Like that was her life, right? And so trying to balance that with classes online, like
it's tough. It's so interesting the essential, what has become essential right now. And it is Maslow's 100% right now.
I know. And I always think about, because when we talk about in sociology, the value that is given to certain, or the value, and then therefore the pay that's given to certain jobs. So like, what's it like?
CEO of Enron.
Yeah. Or like an NBA player. Like you're literally useless right now.
Yeah.
But
thanks,
you're used to getting
basketball.
paid, right? So what about all of our essential workers? Is that going to change? I mean, is there value? There's definitely value added at this time. Is that going to continue? Or once we get back to real life, I guess not real life, normal life. Yeah, I don't know. It's pretty crazy. I will say, I don't know if it's not really about sociology, but I was listening to one of my favorite podcasts, and you may listen to this, or maybe you will.
Are you going to say my favorite murder?
No, but that is one of them.
I know your favorite podcast is the Infinitely Irrational podcast.
You are right. So second favorite, my favorite murder. Well, about my favorite murder, that's really keeping me like, let's keep things consistent. All right. It's Mondays and Thursdays. I always know what to expect. But then the third would be This Podcast May Kill You. Have you ever heard of that podcast?
No, what's it called?
This Podcast May Kill You.
Oh, This Podcast May Kill You. Okay, I thought you were like, this podcast, and then you said may kill you.
It may kill you. No. It's basically about, it's like two epidemiologists, but they're doing a similar thing. So kind of pivoting towards this COVID-19. And obviously they did their episode on what it is, how do you get it, like how did it develop over time, like what's the history and the epidemiology of the disease. But they also did one where they brought on two psychologists to talk about mental health during this time. And the one thing that I realized I was doing with myself is, obviously this is a really stressful time. And as I mentioned earlier, we're used to being in control of a lot of things, especially in the teaching profession. So you can control, when they enter your classroom and what they're doing, and you can redirect them and all of those different things. And now all of that is out. Like, you can't guarantee that they're going to come to your Zoom meeting, or even that they're paying attention, or that you can't manage the distractions that they have. On top of that, it's really easy to become annoyed more easily. Your patience is definitely a lot lower because you're in a stressful situation as well. And when people do things that annoy you, or they don't follow your directions, or they don't read the email that you send, the one thing I got out of that podcast was like, try to be empathetic,
right,
with everyone, and realize that we're all trying to figure it out, and to give each other more leeway, be more flexible, be more patient than you normally would be, because we're all kind of in this situation that we've never been in before. And it's obviously traumatic, and there are other things that everyone is worrying about. So that was something that I really got out of that podcast. And I feel like if there's anything that I would want other people to think about, is just taking a step back and thinking about what the other person could be experiencing at that time.
Man, it's interesting that you say that, because when I talked to Holly Dickin, my math faculty friend from Muncie, Indiana, which, by the way, if you're a Parks and Rec fan, you know why that's cool. Oh. But she was talking about how, she sent this thing to the student, and the student didn't write her back or didn't do anything until the last minute. And she wrote back and said, oh man, I'm disappointed. And when they actually were able to connect, the first thing he was like, I'm so sorry, all these things. And she was like, no, it's fine. And then she goes, it's just, these are interesting times right now. And she really had to take a step back and think, it's okay for me to be disappointed, but I also have to be understanding. And then in talking to Isis yesterday, the podcast that was right before this one, the episode, she was talking about what needs to happen. You need to do right now, what you need to do in order to survive. Mm-hmm. And I think both of those are so true. And it's really hard right now. I was reading some article the other day about when fear kind of comes through, the first thing you do is circle the wagons around yourself. And so instantly you're no longer worried about, that's why we have the shortage of toilet paper, for heaven's sake. Good Lord. But, and then I read, sidebar on this, that there's some shortage of baby chicks, because I know what people need their own. What is that? I'll have no room to raise no chickens. What?
It's ridiculous. And those poor little chicks.
I know. Listen, when I was small, I grew up in Belize. Yeah. My friend and I occasionally had baby chicks, and it drove my parents nuts. And they were like, no, you cannot have. So they were like, we'll take them to this person who has a farm and it can live happily ever after. Disclaimer, I don't know what happened to those chicks, but I hope they went to live happily ever after. But I'm so concerned for the future of these baby chicks right now.
I mean, it's so sad. And come on, you're not going to
raise chickens and have eggs?
Oh my.
Know what to do with that. Okay, so let me ask you another question.
Okay.
How have you managed the large scale changes that are happening so rapidly? Because honestly, it seems like things change sometimes by the minute. And how do you manage that in your role?
Really overnight, right?
Yeah.
I go home one day. Sorry, my dog just whined. Go home one day, you think it's one thing, and then 5, 6 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
It's oh no, it's something completely different. I'm like, all right. Yeah. I guess just being flexible. And I don't know, Natalie. I don't even know that I have managed these changes.
That's fair, man. Oh, I feel like right now we're taking it 1 minute at a time. And one of the things that I've been doing a lot is I've been thinking about this quote from Hagrid where he says, what's coming will come and we'll meet it when it does. And I think that every day I'm having to meet something. And whether it's my students that are telling me that whatever is going on in their lives. One of them told me that she decided she was going to quit smoking right now. She's a single mom with a couple of kids. And I was like, oh girl, I'm sending every good vibe that I can send you. Another one wrote me and told me that she's an A student and she feels like a failure. And she's not a failure. And I hate that I can't do anything right now. I feel so helpless. And and then of course we've got some family members, one of whom is living by herself, and I can't talk to her 24 hours of the day, but I talked to her last night and she wasn't doing that great. And so I just I know exactly what you mean about not knowing that you're managing the changes, because I feel like every single day is some new Voldemort that we have to face.
I feel like my biggest role right now, and same thing for the AP for academics and principal and president and so on, is just trying to do what you can in that moment. So I feel like I'm normally like this anyways. Like if someone emails me, I want to get back to them as soon as I can. Mm-hmm. That's just like my personality maybe. But I feel that even more so now, that if there's anything I can do to limit the amount of time that someone feels the way they do, mm-hmm. then that's what I want to do. So if that's a parent, emailing me about the spotty internet that they have and the number of times Zoom has gone down during their kids' video conference with their class, I want to assure them that there aren't going to be any repercussions on the student's end. If that's a student coming to me saying that they're feeling so overwhelmed and they feel like there's more work now than there was during the regular school year, then I want to do whatever I can to help them manage that workload and to communicate with teachers. So I just feel like it's kind of like what I said earlier, those are things that I was always doing before, but now they're happening more frequently and I'm spending more of my time on those. It just seems to be a more dominant theme and something that I want to manage as, much as I can to just help everyone kind of take it easy as much as they can.
Yeah. I think it's a tough balance. It's just, if you've got, so we went through Hurricane Harvey and there are bits that are similar here. And one of the things that I think is similar is trauma brain. It's, I was having a conversation with a friend yesterday and she was telling me that when she was in grad school, her professor, she was dealing with some stuff and she looked at her test and it was it wasn't even English. And she went up to her professor and she was like, I'm sorry, I can't read this. This is not English right now. And so the professor told her, go home, breathe, because he kind of knew what was going on. But he's like, go home, take a breath, breathe, come back. And she came back the next day and she was able to continue. And I'm so glad we had that conversation yesterday, because I think I've been kind of having this theme of you won't remember what your professor did, you'll remember how they made you feel, or you won't remember what your supervisor did, you'll remember how they made you feel. Mm-hmm. I mean, we hear this all the time about, leaving bad leaders or whatever. And it's the same thing all the way through. And your message of being empathetic, I think, is so important for people to hear right now.
Yeah.
So before we head off into the sunset, or, the sun, as it were. Well, it looks, I don't know, is it sunny over there? It's not sunny over here. But
yeah, it's pretty sunny. It's
lucky
60 degrees. So,
That's so perfect. Yesterday, it said there was a high of 90 here.
Oh, my.
This was excellent weather for running. I think it was also 99% humidity. Super amazing. Right. But so before you get to head off with Buffy to what would you say, Rock Creek Park?
Yeah. We'll go on a walk soon. She's starting to stir,
She's so mad at me right now. But
she's like, "Why are you ruining my nap time?"
Before you go on your walk, what do you want to leave people with? Are there any words of advice or thoughts that you have for anybody that you might want to share?
Give yourself a break and give others a break. And do what you can. And if you can't do it, go read a book go take a walk with, 6 feet between you and the other person, if you're permitted to walk outside, and come back to it. Communicate. Don't be afraid to kind of like ask for what you need. Yeah, do things that you enjoy. I always say that to anyone that is like any student that comes to me and is like, I'm just like so stressed out or whatever it is. And I'm like, are you doing anything that you enjoy? Is there anything during your day that you enjoy doing? If the answer is no, then like you got to change that right now. And there is nothing more important than your mental health and taking care of yourself. Everything else it'll all figure itself out regardless. So,
man, like this worked out so well that you were the last person that I spoke to and the last episode that is going to air in this series, because that you have summarized in a couple of sentences, a short paragraph, as it were, what everybody has been saying, but in more detail. So I think that's super amazing. Thank you so much, seriously, for spending time with us today. It's been super fun.
Thank you. I really enjoyed seeing you again.
Yes, me too. And so listeners, if you guys have any questions for me or for Anna, you can reach out, podcast@infinitelyirrational.com, or you can go to social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or you can just visit the website at infinitelyirrational.com. Tomorrow, we get back into the swing of things. We've got our third Cardano episode that is airing with tumultuous events, even more tumultuous events than now. So we hope you enjoy it. What will stop? Oh, right there in front of my... Like, I haven't done this 4,000 times.